Morning students. Today we will discuss about circulation of ocean water. You have seen that ocean water is always in motion and it moves both ways, horizontally as well as vertically. The movement of ocean water takes place in three different ways. There are three different names to these movements. One is waves, tides and ocean currents. Now, one by one, we will know about the different circulations of ocean waters. That is waves first, we will discuss the tides and then ocean currents. And in this, all these type of movements, wind is the most important motive force for the horizontal movement of the surface water in the ocean. And these movements takes place due to the following factors: the temperature difference and the density variations in the ocean water. You know that there are differences if the ocean is location is near the polar area, or the ocean is near the equatorial area. There is a huge difference of temperature. All right, and that is why there are different there is differences in waves, tides, ocean currents, the difference in the salinity in the sea. Sea is a saline water, but there is very much difference of salinity of the sea, where the water evaporates in equatorial region, where the sea water evaporates, there is more saline. And if you go to the colder area where there is the polar region area where the sea water is very less temperature is there and their evaporation is very less, you will get there the salinity, the salt contained in the water is much lesser. Clear, children? There is a difference in the salinity in the sea. So there are different saline content of the sea. It also makes difference for the different circulation of the ocean water. Then impact of the prevailing winds. In which direction the winds are flowing, and it also depends for the all these ocean currents, tides and waves. We will know one by one that by some points that how what is waves, what are waves, what are tides and what are ocean current, what are their significance. All these topics we will discuss today. Going to next, waves. First, we will know about waves. Waves are the rise and fall of water on the surface of the sea water. What is very simple that you know that sea water has waves. River waters also have waves, but sea waters you have might have experienced, those who have visited coastal areas, that see how sea water, the rise and fall of water is called waves. And when the wind comes in contact with the sea water, it pushes the water in the direction in which it blows. Understood? That wind forces the sea water to push in the direction in which the wind blows, and that is why it is winds have a very great role, very important role rather. Thus, water particle starts moving up and down in the direction of the wind, forming curls in the water, and these curls are created waves. All of you are familiar with these curls. Wind push water towards land, making water rise and fall. And this rise is called crest and the fall is called trough. You have to remember this. The rise is called the crest and the fall is called the trough. The vertical distance between the crest and the trough is called wave height. You can understand the height, the fall and the rise and fall. It is called height, and the distance between two crests and two troughs are called the wavelength. It is the wavelength. The crest and the trough's distance. It is between two crest and two troughs. It is called wavelength, and the heights. You know that the wave's height. That is called the wave height. Waves are often associated with storms. When there is a storm, the wind blows in a very rough wind is there often the waves heights increases. Is it clear? The wave height increases with the storms. And enormous tidal waves such as tsunami, you have heard that in 2004 India faced a huge destruction during the tsunami, and this type of tsunamis cause destruction. Isn't it destructive? They are destructive. All right. Now coming to tides. Next, circulation tides. Now the alternate rise and fall of seawater due to gravitational forces of the sun, the moon are called the tides. And you know that there are the movement towards the coast is called the high tide. The rise of seawater and the movement towards the coast is called high tides. And the fall of seawater and its movements towards the sea. If you have visited the coastal area, you might have noticed that how the sea water comes towards the coast and how it goes away from the coast towards the sea. And this is called low tide. And when it comes towards the coast, it is called the high tide. The most important cause for the occurrence of high tide and low tide are the gravitational pull exerted by the sun, the moon on the surface of the earth. And these two tides every day occurs every day, and between these two high tides there are two low tides also. Tides do not rise to the same height every day because of the position of the moon, and that is why that their positioning of these three, earth, moon and sun, it depends. That is why it changes every day, and it shifts every day. That is why there is a gravitational pull is also not the same every day. So there is a change in the tides, high tides and low tides. All right. And very important, spring tide and neap tide. So very important how this happens. The sun, moon and earth are in same line when on full moon and new moon day. That means Purnima and Amavasya. On these 2 days, the sun, the moon exert their combined gravitational pull on the earth. And this leads to the occurrence of the highest tide in a month and is called the spring tide. And this spring tide occurs twice a month. So you have understand that the highest tide, this is called the spring tide. The sun and the moon are at right angle to the earth on the half moon days, and which occurs twice a month. And on these days, the gravitational pull of the sun, the moon, work just the opposite direction. And in this situation, the high tide is lower than the normal, and the low tide is higher than the normal. That means that the high tide is much lower. High tide means which comes near the coast, which is much, much lower than but the low tide which goes away from towards the sea. The tides takes the water towards the sea is much higher, much higher. That is known as NEAP tide. Understood? The sun, the moon are at right angle to the earth on the half moon days. When the moon is on half, neither full moon nor new moon, neither Purnima or Amavasya. On other days, what happens? The gravitational pull just work opposite to each other. The sun and the moon work just opposite to each other, opposite directions they work, and because of that, the high tide is much lower. What is high tide? Which comes near the coast. High tide, the water when it comes near the coast, it is called the high tide, which is much lower. And the low tide, which means it goes towards the sea. The water goes towards the sea, away from the coast. That is much, much higher than the normal days. Clear? So this is called neap tide and spring tide. You have understood the difference, children? Now we will go to significance of tide. The high tide helps some rivers to become navigable. That is, at the time of high tide, the water level rises and it helps the ships to enter to reach the harbor. Is it clear? It helps and in the rivers can be a good harbor. And many places, Kolkata is one of the oldest in India, the harbor. And here also the same way, during the high tides, all the ships enters the rivers to get in and have harbor there is a dockyard and in Kolkata, and the same way in London also tidal ports are there. Ports are there. The tidal currents keep the river mouths free from sediments. When there is very tidal currents means when there is high tide, and because of high tide and low tides, there it just helps to take away the sediments from the coast. Otherwise, there is sediment. That is why we get beaches, because of the sediments. And the force of water due to rise and fall can be used to generate electricity. Now, this non-conventional ways of generating electricity is one of the tidal electricity. And these are the other ways when people are opting, when governments, when are finding other ways to generate other sources, other resources to generate this electricity. And tidal electricity is one such way. And here the force of water due to rise and fall can be used to generate electricity. The fishermen normally sail out to open sea with low tide and return with high tide. They go towards the sea with low tide, and when they come, it helps them to reach the coast with the high tide. And the salty water is stored in low-lying coastal area during the period of high tide. And this salty water is used for making common salt. And the energy of the tides is used to generate electricity. Power plant stations can be set up in UK, Canada, France, Japan. All these areas are there. All right. Now, ocean current. The water in the ocean is constantly and regularly moving from one part of the ocean to another part. When streams of water is flowing regularly on the surface of the ocean in indefinite direction is called ocean current. And the speed of this ocean current is about 5 kilometer to 10 kilometer per hour. On the basis of temperature, ocean current can be divided into two categories: warm water currents and cold water currents. The warm water currents originate near the equator and flow towards the poles, while the cold water currents carry water from polar region towards the tropical areas, towards the equatorial area. All right. So this just the opposite. The warm waters originates near the equator and cold water originates near the polar areas. Now, what are the effects of ocean current? The ocean effects of ocean currents are they influence coastal temperature. The warm and cold current increase and decrease the temperature of coastal area. The places where warm and cold currents meet are rich in tiny organisms known as plankton, and they are the very good food for fish. So it helps. So such places are good fishing grounds. The fishermen gets they catches fish in this area. Ocean currents help maritime trade as ships that flow ocean currents from move faster and safe well. Here the maritime trade, the spelling is here I have typed wrong. This is trade, children, Trade. Sorry children, here typing mistake is there. You correct it. Trade, trade is. Warm currents increase the moisture bearing capacity of the wind while the cold current decreases the same. Alright. Warm currents help to melt icebergs which are dangerous for shipping. So these are the effects. So it is good that warm currents increase the moisture bearing capacity of the wind while the cold currents decrease the moisture. Warm currents help to melt icebergs which are dangerous for shipping, and sometimes ocean currents cause problem for ships. Thick fogs occur where cold and warm currents meet, and this reduces visibility. So some of these effects I have given in short, the effect of ocean currents. So we have come to the end of this chapter. All of you, just you have to go through again and again the points given for this circulation of ocean currents is very important. If it is not difficult, you read the points and try to understand. This will help you to understand. And if you have any doubt, we will clear those things in the doubt class, children. So don't worry, go through it, write these points in your copy. We will discuss. And about certain, you know that warm currents and cold currents are there in your book, in your syllabus. We will discuss in some other way while doing the exercises. We can do that. And next class, I'll give you question answers of this chapter. Okay, thank you, children. And do this work seriously, all of you.